So without further delay, Maggie, I will pass it to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much. And I'll just kick it off with a quick intro. So my name is Maggie Schroeder. I'm a principal product marketing manager here at Acquia. And again, really focused in on our Drupal cloud and helping all customers to deliver great digital experiences. So Elliot, over to you.
And I'm Elliot Maurer, Creative Strategy Director Product at Media Currents, focused on developing our product strategy team and helping work with clients across all verticals in imagining new digital experiences.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll kick it off here. I mean, we're super excited to be partnering today to bring you this webinar. Media Current and Acquia have a long history, and I'm actually seeing a couple of our joint customers logging in and as participants. So thanks so much for joining us today. And, Elliot, any other color that you want to provide? But I think, again, we've, jointly provided a lot of value to customers, and of course, specifically in the EDU space. So great to see you all again in the audience.
Yeah, and we're excited to jump into this conversation today. Cool. So we know that the college search and selection experience used to look very different from found out about schools in an analog way, and they researched them in a really analog way, and they made their decisions in a really analog way. And I remember when you used to get actually mailed a physical letter when you were accepted, and I'm not that old. I think now it's like a push notification or something, I don't know. But really the whole world has changed, and it's accelerated at hyperspeed over the last 2 years, and higher education has kind of been put through the ringer. And we're now moving into this new era. We have an interesting opportunity to think about what it means to deliver meaningful digital experience in the higher ed space. And we know that prospective students are basically shopping online for their colleges and universities. So rather than going against the grain of an evolving digitally engaged world, how do we create compelling and differentiated experiences that really cut through the noise and appeal to students in an increasingly crowded marketplace? So to frame the conversation today, I wanted to introduce this idea called liquid expectations. And this is a concept that was first published by a couple of strategy leaders at the innovation consultancy Fjord in an issue of The Economist back in 2015. Despite being nearly 6 years old, it still holds up. The idea of liquid expectations is basically that our experience with one thing influences our perception of other things, even if those other things are out of category. So our experience of using Uber or Lyft to get a ride, or using Amazon to order literally anything direct to our doorstep, has shaped our expectations of interacting with everything else. So we've been effectively spoiled by the buy now button, and I'm only sort of exaggerating about that. So when it comes to higher education, students are no longer comparing school A to school B. They're bringing their whole history of their digital experience with them when they visit your website for the first time. And for students who are in Gen Z, who are entering college now or entering college in the next few years, this is a longer history than any other generation. So it's not just enough to benchmark your digital experience against your immediate competitors, because students now have experiential alternatives to traditional higher education in these companies like Coursera and edX and Masterclass, Udemy, and most of these companies are actually working with established higher education institutions to build up their product offering and their credibility. But we have to wonder if this is becoming a reasonable alternative to a 2-year or 4-year degree. I think time will tell on that. But the reality is that these companies are digital first, and they've designed and optimized their products to appeal to consumers who have these liquid expectations. So we know that students are bringing their digital history with them when they engage with the university website. And we know that they're aware, at least, of these experiential competitors that are making really interesting moves in this space. And if that were all, maybe it would be easy to create a meaningful and competitive digital experience in higher ed. But as you all know, that's not all, because there's this massive digital landscape, and students are more engaged with these products and services than ever before. So these liquid expectations of prospective students and their families have now extended to this wider view. And when we think about creating digital experiences for higher ed, we need to be looking at the expectations that are being set by these digital first products and services, and think about the ways that we can incorporate their strategies and their tactics into our work. So 3 of the products that I've been thinking about recently are Twitch, Spotify, and Discord. So Twitch, if you're not familiar with it, connects users primarily to some of the top gamers, playing through their favorite games, talking about their strategies, giving viewers an opportunity to connect with experts on demand. And students are drawn to universities by virtue of expertise. But the traditional classroom setting is anything but on demand. So what if a professor hosted a mock lecture for prospective students on Twitch? Or what if Twitch was your platform for virtual tours? How do we provide students with access to expertise on demand? Now, Spotify, as we all know, is one of the largest media streaming platforms in the world. It's got 70 million music tracks, almost 3 million podcast episodes, and their whole mission is to connect listeners with music that they'll love and expose them to new music that they'll also love. And so as a result of that, they've become somewhat of the gold standard for personalization. Spotify knows that I will love something before I do. So how can we use the information that we have about prospective students to suggest a course of study, or to tell them about a campus organization or student activity that we know that they would love? How do we provide students with this user-driven personalization that enriches and enhances their experience the more that they engage with us? Finally, Discord builds communities around messaging by allowing people from all over the world to connect around mainstream and niche topics and communicate in the method of their choice. Community is a huge draw for higher education, but an on-campus experience isn't possible for some students. And as we've seen recently, simply sometimes not an option for any students. Discord is really interesting because it's not a primary platform necessarily. A lot of people are using it to connect with their friends as they play games or watch movies, but it also supports asynchronous communication across multiple devices. So what if your school had a Discord server for prospective students to connect with current students? How could an on-campus communities come to life across geographies and time zones and community-based engagement to start before students set foot on our campus? There's a lot of things to consider when you're thinking about creating new experiences or injecting new life into your existing digital properties. So Maggie is going to actually talk about how we balance the differing priorities and limitations that folks in higher ed face.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elliot. And I think that's a really great introduction, again, to challenges that educational institutions face today, right? It really brings it into perspective, especially where our the students, faculty are really coming from, because they're engaged with all of the applications that you saw, previously, and all of those brands, right? I know myself, at least Spotify. And so educational institutions, though, are becoming more pressured by these expectations, right? We're expected to deliver experiences that do a lot more because of these expectations. And because of that, these experiences need to have more content. In order to get more content, you need to enable more creators. And also, we can't forget about the emerging channels that we're engaging with, right? Even during the pandemic, I got myself an Apple Watch, right? There are more channels than ever where we're expecting to consume content. And then finally, we need these experiences to be more personal. I think the Spotify example is a great example of that. They know that, myself, I'm not much of a country music listener. However, I love listening to 80s rock. They're very hyper aware of that. And I think that more and more people are expecting that, not just with Spotify, but with all of the digital experiences that they're engaging with. But of course, these emerging expectations have, some consequences, right? It's not easy to deliver these experiences, right? Especially with less budget, right? With increasing complexity, right? Think of all those channels, all of that content, right? It's not easy. It's increasingly becoming more and more complex. And then finally, of course, we've talked a lot about the increasing expectations. But again, it's not just the increasing expectations of the consumers of your experiences, but it's also the increasing expectations of your organization to deliver that type of experience for students. Again, with the same budget and the same staff, without having the ability to increase headcount and really put money at the problem. And so what do we do, right? What do we do in order to increase profit and really boost student acquisition when we're talking about the education space, as well as become more efficient with the resources that we have so that we can reduce wasteful spending and ultimately enable smarter business planning and business strategy to create really the end goal of content agility. So there are some capabilities that are required to drive these types of results. Right. And so the first one is, going back to kind of the first slide that I showed you, right? For more content, you need to be able to deliver that content fast. Think about all of the different events that happened over the past year. Students were looking for information on COVID, right? And that content needs to be up to date. You need the latest on whether there's a mask mandate on campus, on when students are going back to class. They're expecting to consume that content immediately. And that's not just relevant for COVID, but really for every kind of event that could happen, again, for students that would impact students and also faculty. And then when I mentioned more creators, right? In order to enable more creators of the content that you need to deliver quickly, it needs to be super easy and super simple for your content creators to contribute content to your experiences, right? It can't be everyone's expected to code, right? Coding is slowly becoming a thing of the past. And so you need the ability to take some of the legwork away from developers and the high code type of content delivery and really start leveraging solutions that make it easy. And of course, more channels, you need the ability to deliver your content everywhere. It's no longer just about engaging on a desktop traditional website, right? That's the thing of the past. And if you think about it, it's emerging super quickly. I believe it was almost when I was in college, it definitely was all online, mostly on laptops, right? But now kids going to college are expecting to engage on their mobile phones. I know I'm on mine, maybe even wearables in the future, and who knows what's next, right? That's only been in the past 10 years that we've seen that type of adoption of different mobile apps and websites and web applications, et cetera, right? So we need to be able to deliver it everywhere and be able to adapt to what's coming next. And then finally, of course, making it more personal. It needs to all of these experiences need to take into account who is the person behind the screen who is consuming the content, right? It can't just be any sort of information. I mentioned that, I'm not the biggest country music listener. If Spotify consistently delivered me country music, I wouldn't exactly be as happy with the experience, right? And more our consumers are expecting that level of personalization with the content and expecting to be delivered the content that they want to consume quickly with the consideration of who they are. So if we take a deeper look into each of these requirements, when we talk about delivering content fast, especially for an educational institution, right, we need first and foremost to establish governance across all of our digital assets, right? And you need to be able to manage all of your content through a centralized user experience or a user interface rather. And of course, next, to create these new sites and these new experiences quickly and to create more content, you need to be able to have reusable site templates and even components that you can reuse across sites to, again, make it quick to create the content that you need to distribute. And then finally, as you're creating all of this new content, you need to be able to control it, and not just through a centralized UI, right? It's one thing being able to see all of your content and all of your sites and all of your digital assets through one lens, but it's another thing to be able to apply roles and permissions to ensure brand compliance and site compliance across, again, your entire digital experience. And so that becomes really critical to enable the right people to have the right access to the right content, right? I know that for myself here at Acquia, I have access to update a lot of the content on our website, but I know that for myself, I can't go in and update, say, our brand colors. As much as I love the color lime green, I don't think Acquia would enjoy it if I started using that color all over the product pages that I own. So again, ensuring roles and permissions, super critical when it comes to delivering more content, especially as you're starting to become more and more agile. And so the next requirement, of course, just to dive a little bit deeper into making it easier, right? Low code is critical for agile content. Right? You cannot be creating all of the content you need. We talked about having the same amount of people, right, on our staff to deliver content, but you can really expand that by using low code, right? Maybe on your staff, you have a ton of developers who are super talented and super experienced, but what you don't want them getting bogged down with are the constant asks from, say, another department or, the marketing team coming down and asking them to update a product page or update, one of the school's microsites. And that's just going to take away from valuable work that they could be doing. So by leveraging low code, you're enabling more content creators to deliver content and to help contribute to these experiences. And so really it helps anyone to build or update pages and reuse templates and the components that I mentioned previously to even create sites from scratch. And then finally, you also need a drag and drop visual interface, right? It's not as easy just to go in and maybe type in some content. Being able to actually interact and see the changes that you make in real time is also critical for agile content creation with low code or even no code at the end of the day. So the next, of course, delivering across multiple channels is critical, right? So you need a flexible solution for multi-channel delivery. You need to be able to deliver not just in the high code sense, right? So completely disconnecting the front end from the back end, right? That's going to take a lot of coding, a lot of work from your developers and bog them down even more. But also maybe you don't even want to go the full low code approach. So taking a hybrid approach to delivering content is really the best way to, again, give yourself the flexibility to deliver content across more channels and also adopt, again, new channels as they evolve and they emerge. And finally, it empowers all teams, right? So by keeping the low code and enabling maybe your marketers or different departments within your institution, that's critical, but also empowering your developers to really innovate where they deem necessary, maybe creating a new app or delivering content across maybe an Alexa or Google Home. Again, whatever your organization wants to drive towards and whatever your students are really demanding from you. And then finally, of course, talking about making it personal. It's really, personalization is a really hot topic, and making content personalized is really critical. But in order to do that, first, you need to understand who is it that's visiting your site? Who is it who's engaging with your digital experience? And by understanding and getting a 360-degree view of the customer, right, you're able to deliver more personalized experiences. So you need the ability to unify your data right through a UI and make that all visible, and also access that through an API. You need the ability to apply machine learning to that data, right, and in order to deliver the content correctly. And then finally, right, make sure that this is all metadata configurable all through the UI. So once again, you're lowering the barrier of entry and allowing more people to contribute to creating more personalized experience. And so really what I kind of boil this down to is the unification of content and data. So having the ability to really generate content agility and then match that and underpin it with the data of your students, of your faculty, of all of the people who are interacting with your experiences to create, again, really this memorable experience for your students, for your faculty, and for anyone else that you're serving within your organization. And so that's really the ideal state. So with that, I'll actually pass it over to Elliot to give a great example, again, of a customer who's really optimizing their experience. So Elliot, over to you.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about Emory University's Gozoida Business School. So Gozoida ranks consistently in the top tier, and they have constantly evolved their educational programs to meet the changing definition of what today's business leaders need. But the problem was that they didn't necessarily evolve their website in the same way. So the website is Gozoida's core digital asset, and it's their primary means of connecting with prospective students across the globe. And they were encumbered by a legacy system, content in multiple places, and this onerous publishing process. And they had dreamed really of the world where they had editorial flexibility and they could truly capture and communicate the essence of the school and the student experience. And of course, they wanted to increase prospective student engagement and applications. So Gozoida partnered with MediaCurrent to refine the user experience and replace the legacy CMS with Drupal and introduce a component-based design system that would not only expedite initial site development, but also set them up for success in ongoing publishing. And by developing a UX and content strategy that was really centered around the primary users of the site, we could increase their access to relevant content and allow for deeper engagement with Gozoida as an institution, and ultimately set them up to deliver more personalized experiences. So hopefully we have both educated and enticed you to consider reimagining your digital properties. But one of the biggest questions that we face on all of our engagements is, where do you start and how do you tackle things like personalization and multi-channel delivery and governance? Well, one thing that we know is that we have to do things differently. So higher ed's primary demographics are, they have those liquid expectations, and they are demanding higher performing and more integrated experiences with everything that they interact with. So we know that 75% of Gen Z and millennials, which is a weird generation grouping that makes less and less sense every time I see it, they expect their experience to be connected. And that means that they expect a smooth handoff from department to department. They expect the history of their interaction with your institution to follow them, and for you to make use of that information when you engage with them. 76% of this group also values when you understand how they engage with you, whether that is making sure that your website is responsive, which we know it absolutely should be, or how they want to be communicated with. They want to set those terms with you. And lastly, 75% want instant on-demand engagement, and they're used to it with other products and services, so they now expect it from everything. And how that takes its shape in higher education is somewhat evolving, but we know that this generation expects that institutions are responsive when users initiate communications. So we know that this is the expectation, but how do you support it? At Media Current, we always advise our clients to take a crawl, walk, run approach. And when we're thinking about something like personalization, we shouldn't just buy a bunch of fancy tools and do a bunch of integration work. The crawl step is to start thinking about your navigation, really. Maybe consider implementing an audience-based navigation paradigm that creates these clear pathways through your site. And if you track the engagement with that content, you can not only optimize that in a static way, you can begin to understand the ways that users are browsing and exploring your site. And then you can move into this walk phase where, based on that historical engagement, you can begin to surface relevant content to users as they navigate. And think of this as the entry point into the famous Amazon "you may also like" experience. Would a student who engages with the content in the biology department be interested in the pre-med program? Would they also be interested in a shadowing program at a local hospital? Once you have these optimized routes and you have the optimized content, you can take off running and maybe integrate your CRM and a website personalization product to create dynamic journeys that deliver truly personalized content. So if we know that Sophia from Seattle is considering majoring in history, is interested in pre-law, and is really active in her student government, her experience with your website should reflect what you know about her and make that compelling case to attend your university. So while I'll execute this crawl, walk, run approach on our client engagements, it's always fun to see what the future could be. So Maggie's going to walk us through that now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elliot. Thanks for the awesome customer example too. I think it's really cool to see what Emory did. Always great to see someone really looking to optimize their journey for their students. But with that, let's take a look into the future. Let's take a look at what digital experiences could look like for educational institutions. Right. And so Elliot hinted at this, right? Students are more and more expecting experiences and journeys to be personalized. And so when they start thinking, I'm looking to go to college, I need to find, the best pre-med program out there. Maybe she watched a little too much Grey's Anatomy like myself, thinking, yeah, that's the route I want to go on. I want to be the next Meredith Grey, right? So she's looking for some pre-med programs, but the current state, and, take a minute to ingest this slide. There's a lot there, but the journey is long. And of course, it doesn't just go from the converting into student, right? You want to nurture that student, make sure their experience is amazing while they're at your university, at whatever type of educational institution that you're at now. And also make sure that once they graduate, once they move on, they still feel connected to that community, right? It's all about the experience, not just when they're there, but before and after as well. And so if we take a look into, the discovery phase, right, the student might be looking into, say, the EDU main website. But right now, with the current way that we deliver experiences, you're going to be missing some data on who she is and the fact that, she's really interested into pre-med. And so you're also missing content about pre-med. And then once she finally does meander on over to a department microsite, you might be missing data on her med school evaluation criteria, might be missing data on, where she's coming from to provide the right information and the right next click into content, say, about scholarship programs, or maybe about, room and board as well, if she's coming from out of state. And then finally, if we want to take a look as we go a little bit closer into the evaluation stage, right? In-person school tours, they're not as personal now. People are doing them less and less because once again, these school tours, these in-person tours, they're much less tailored and much less personalized. So if we take a look at what this looks like today, right? Joyce might have done some exploring of the main website, might have found some information on the pre-med program, and it was all enough to get her to go in person and experience a school tour. But at the current way that we deliver these school tours, once again, the tour guide isn't going to know that she's coming, isn't going to know that she's interested in pre-med, and have no connection to the fact that, she's really close to converting and becoming a student or applying to become a student at the university. And so really, again, coming back to the criteria, you need to be able to deliver content fast, right? Whether that be about a pre-med program or maybe any of the clubs or any other resources that Joyce and other prospective students might be looking for. You need to be able to make it easy for other creators to create the content. It can't all just come and funnel through developers, right? It's great to be able to enable other departments to create that content. Maybe even the pre-med program could be enabled to create their own content. And more channels, right? Joyce wasn't just engaging on the desktop, but also was engaging on her phone, her mobile phone as well. And then finally, more personal really coming down to it. So with all of these different criteria, if we were to meet what I discussed earlier on the webinar, what we could deliver by unifying content with the data and understanding more about Joyce and delivering the right content. When we go to the in-person school tour, ideally we would have the intent data. We'd understand that Joyce was coming. She registered to attend a school tour, and you have the data on her that you could deliver to the person guiding the school tour, right? We saw that you were interested in pre-med, and we also noted that you took a lot of time to check out our intramural sports clubs, specifically soccer. And so on that tour, right, she'd be in a very specific school tour where they'd take her to the pre-med classrooms and also have her meet the soccer coach. So again, having the right content delivered and understanding the data about Joyce as a prospective student would lead to higher conversion rates and ultimately raise the acquisition of net new students. And so really the outcome becomes to improve student outcomes and really to nurture a community. So to increase the experience, right, and make it better of obtaining the student, and then of course nurturing them throughout their time at your educational institution. And then finally, making sure the alumni experience also keeps them connected with the community. And really that's all enabled through content and data agility. And so what you go from is freshman frustration to senior success. A little bit corny, I thought that up. If anyone has any better phrases, feel free to throw them in chat. Always welcoming someone who's better at marketing than I am. And so with that, that's the end of our presentation. I know that I did see a couple questions come through chat, so I'll take a look at those. And then I'll pass it back for a little discussion about Acquia Engage, which is coming up soon. And apologies, I am just pulling up the Q&A, which for some reason is not coming up. Give me one moment. Oh, great question from John. So multi-channel. So I'm only hearing about websites and yes, mobile applications. So, and then you mentioned, does your product include integrated email, social, post scheduling, and a mobile application? Does it integrate with student information systems or CRMs like Salesforce? Amazing question. So I'm going to take this from a couple different aspects. So the first one, integrated email, social, post scheduling. Yes, definitely. So Acquia provides Campaign Studio and Campaign Factory, which has all of the abilities to generate email campaigns, schedule social posts, et cetera, and distribute content across those channels. So great question. As far as mobile applications go, that is a great use case for Drupal as well as Acquia CMS. And so again, Drupal as a CMS and Acquia CMS give you the flexibility to be able to configure your application to, again, create mobile apps. And then the next one, does it integrate with student information systems or CRMs like Salesforce? Yes, absolutely. So again, another strength of Acquia CMS as well as Drupal. Drupal itself, if you're not familiar, has over 40,000 modules that are contributed from the Drupal community, and they include many different modules that help you connect your CMS to, again, student information systems like Salesforce. Actually, here at Acquia, we connect our own to Salesforce, and we have many, many customers who do the same. So John, great question. And then I saw another question come through the chat as well, or the Q&A rather, around security. So they mentioned that they were looking to, again, heighten security of their platform and potentially look into a web application firewall. Is that something that's provided? Yes. Great question. So we do provide a web application firewall through Acquia Edge Security. So that's definitely a great option for security. And then it's also worth noting that Acquia Cloud as well as Acquia Site Factory are both FedRAMP authorized, which you might not require FedRAMP authorization, but really what that means for all organizations who leverage Acquia Cloud and Site Factory is that they're being audited to some of the highest security standards in the world, right? So we're making sure that not only that our platform, again, meets all of those standards and is highly secure, and even going forward and auditing that independently, as well as having it audited by third-party auditors. So again, highest level of security. And is Edge provided or available? So Edge is available. So that is an add-on for our solution. So it's definitely something that if you were looking for, again, layer 7 DDoS protection, it's something that you could add into your subscription. Out of the box, however, we do provide platform CDN, which provides layers 3 and 4 DDoS mitigation. So again, the addition of Edge Security just gives you that extra level of security if that's something that your organization mandates. So great questions. Any others? And then we can maybe go back and provide a little additional color as well around Engage. So we do have Acquia Engage coming up October 26th and 27th. And, Elliot, I know that you'll be there. I don't know. I think this is your first Engage. This is going to be my third. So super exciting. Elliot, anything you want to add and provide as far as color, what you're the most excited about for Acquia Engage?
I mean, first time, just excited to experience it all.
Awesome. Great. Oh, and sorry, more questions coming through on the chat. Oh, just thank you. Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks, Elliot. We're super excited to have Media Current joining us this year at Engage. And I know that for myself, again, this is my third Engage. It's been really thrilling. So for those of you in the audience, definitely go register for Acquia Engage. It's a really fun event. It's all online this year, really quick mini sessions. So really fun to just pop in and out as your schedule allows. I know that that's what I ended up doing last year. I presented in a couple and, definitely come by, ask some questions, and I'm sure, again, hope to see you all there. So with that, I think that concludes our presentation. Thank you all for the amazing questions and the engagement throughout the presentation. Elliot, any final words before we close out?
Thanks everybody for joining us.